In step 19 of this course on self-awareness, we talk about the physical nature of your brain with its neurons and synapses and how much you've inherited as a result of your genetic nature as a human being. And then the other part of your brain that is adaptable, that you can change, that you can optimize, and how to go about that whole process of learning effectively.
On the end there, and it sends off kind of chemical signals to another part of the network, and that's got its connections. And there's receptors here. So this neuron sends off these bits of information, really. They're not information, it's connections. It's not even that. It's stuff, okay? That's a more sophisticated word, stuff. It sends them off to the receiver in this other neuron. Now, potentially, this receiver may or may not receive them, or they may get lost. The way this gets set up, and how many of the receivers, there's lots more of them in a given neuron. I say lots. It's not like hundreds of millions or anything like that. It's just quite a lot of receivers. And this information or this connectivity comes across this thing here. This is a gap, and it actually is what's called the synaptic gap. So when people talk about your neurons and your synapses, they're actually talking about the neurons and the synaptic gaps. And the key to learning, and this is why I'm bothering to do this, the key to learning is when you were growing up, and up until a certain age, you were receptive to sending information off and collecting information and building up a set of kind of, well, that one, and that one, say. And that basically says, okay, this is the way I am going to work. I've decided I am interested in 1, 2, 4, and 7, or whatever. I have learned that that is what I'm going to receive when this neuron sends information to me across the synaptic gap. That's all I'm interested in. I'm not going to even try and use these other ones. They get kind of, don't bother with that, don't bother with that, and don't bother with that. Just take this, use it in here, and then send it on to the next neuron. And these other neurons are out here with them. They've got their dendrites and God knows what all else, all receiving the information. So the real key to this is a path becomes established in your nervous system, through your neural networks. And this establishment of the path is called learning. And your mind is ready to learn up until a certain age. If you watch a baby trying to pick up something, they experiment time and time again to try and pick something up. So the point here is that we have all these inputs coming into our network, and as they come in, they follow what by the time you're 7 are predetermined paths, especially to do with your behavior. Now, there are quite a lot of your network is left open to learning. It doesn't block this, and this. And that's a certain type of readiness to absorb information. But it's only limited types of information that are left. And that is to do with facts and basically procedures. And by procedures, I mean how to do things. So you have a capacity and you retain a capacity to learn new facts. And in fact, you have a capacity to learn new procedures. So if you have an electric light switch or something goes wrong in your house, or a tap is dripping, or there's some other aspect of practicality, and you want to find out how to do it, you go onto YouTube, and there's dozens and dozens of fabulous videos there, and you can look at them and find out how to mend that tap, how to, fix that light or whatever. Of course, I have to say, if it's electrical switches, you've got to think about whether you want to do it yourself or whether it isn't a bit more complicated and you need a professional. But that's just up to you and your sort of approach to life. But it does bring in the other aspect, actually, of this, which is there are people in the society and the community who they learn how to do complicated electrics or plumbing or what have you. You haven't learned those facts, and it's not worth your time learning them because you don't want to be a plumber or an electrician. You want to do something else. Who knows what? Be a scientist, drive a bus, become an astronaut. I don't know what it is. But so your brain hasn't allocated a lot of learning to how to become an electrician or a plumber, say. But other people have, and they become what's called SMEs, which is subject matter experts. So a subject matter expert might be, e.g., a plumber or electrician. So this subject matter expert concept is important because what happens in your brain as you learn during these early years is you develop the skills and the knowledge of certain topics, like how to eat with a knife and fork, or how to do something with chopsticks, how to go to the toilet in an acceptable way as far as your parents are concerned, and so on. It's amazing the amount of stuff kids have to learn. And it does take them, the Homo humans, just learning to walk. You take a baby, typically it takes a baby a year, all being well, to learn to walk. They may do it in 10 months. They may take them 18 months, or who knows how long it might take them. But typically it takes about a year for the kid to learn to walk. And they do it in stages. They start off being able to sit up, then they crawl, then they walk, then they run, and then you can't stop them. They bounce around the blooming walls. They're all over the place. But it does take them a year or two to walk and run. Now, you think what happens when a baby horse is born, what in the West we call a foal, F-O-A. I think I'm right with that. F-O-A-L, little horse. So here's the foal. It gets born, and here's the mum, here's the baby, comes out, plonk like that. He's born. Right. Now, does it lay there for a year or two before, does it crawl? Does it learn to walk? Does it learn to run? How long does it take a foal to learn to stand up? And the answer is about 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Anyone who's into horses will tell you this little horse can stand up within a few minutes of being born. Now, how is that? How come a horse can do something that a human baby takes a year to learn? And what it's all about is this whole business of nature and nurture. So that horse, that little horse, has within its nature, within the network of its brain, it is, let us say, 90% connected, and it's got 10% for learning. So it's great in natural terms, natural selection, whatever, that clearly it's necessary for that small horse to be able to learn to walk and especially to run, because in nature, horses aren't that high up on the pecking order of who's going to get eaten. So they need to learn to run, and they need to learn to run pretty blooming quickly. Humans, because of the way we've organized our society, it's okay for a baby and a child to be pretty well helpless up until a certain age. And my own view is that age of about 7 is the age at which a kid is expected to be able to protect itself, to be able to especially run away and hide from large creatures. And pretty much a 7-year-old kid can handle an awful lot of the normal creatures it will find in nature, especially if you've taught that kid to use a big club or whatever. So children can learn to be relatively self-sufficient by the time they're about 7 years old. Now, in order for a child to learn adequately during this period of learning, during connecting up these 2 billion neurons, I'm running out the horse. I'm sure you all love the horse, and I am available for graphical commissions if you fancy artwork around your walls, but I think it's unlikely. So we've talked neurons and synapses and dendrites. I'm not going to bother with axons. We've talked about subject matter X, so I'm going to leave that on there. Here we are. We've got the horse is 90%. Now, what about a person? How much of your behavior, what percentage of your brain is connected up at the point of birth? And here's another thing. Does the number of neurons you have, does it grow? As a child grows physiologically, it gets bigger, doesn't it? I mean, they start about down there, and then they get bigger and bigger. And it would appear in each generation, they seem to get bigger and bigger still. So how much is connected up? Now, people argue about this. I'm not going to bother to argue. I'm going to take the middle road and say 50-50. Now, you may say, well, you know, a baby's pretty helpless. So how come 50% is taken away instantly just for the kid to survive? And what the neurons are doing is it's all to do with breathing. You think about it. When a child is born, the moment it comes into the world, it's been living inside its mother. I'm talking to you now in 2019. Most babies come from mothers. No doubt in 20 or 30 years, they might come from somewhere else. But so it's been living inside its mother. It's been constrained, horrendously constrained in a small space. It's been surrounded by liquid, and all its nutrients come in through a tube that goes through its stomach or tummy or whatever you want to call it. So it's in that situation. Then suddenly it gets born. Whack. It comes out into the world. And what does it have to do in those first few seconds? It has to learn to breathe for a start. It has to learn to take all the air and put it into its lungs. It didn't breathe before it was born. It didn't eat before it was born. It didn't have a waste system before it was born. All of that was built into this 50%. If you watch a fetus growing, you're not going to watch them, but if you see pictures of it, very early on, they actually have gills to some extent, because that's to do with, you know, where humans came from, our whole long history. And that growing fetus, as it grows, it connects up its brain. Babies have quite big brains relative to the size of their body. And what they're doing is connecting up all this stuff. So once it's born, we're now thinking about, okay, there's 50%
of these neurons. We've still got, 100 billion of them left over. But this is where the learning takes place. The human learning.